International question! International question! International question! Mysterious name, UK.
Bonjour. UK, cheerio.
Yeah.
Hello.
Oh my God. Okay. So the person I have entitled Mysterious Name writes, "Hello, Allison and Gabby. First things first, I love the podcast, and it has been wonderful to watch you both grow into the incredible people that you are. Also very excited about your new book, Allison. I have an international question. I live in the UK. My name is obvious from my email address, but I prefer if you just call me a different name if you read this out. Sarah, Natalie, I don't mind. I, Allison, decided to call them Mysterious Name.
Sure. A solid first and last name.
Mysterious Name writes, I'm looking for some advice about how to deal with an issue I've been experiencing for years without realizing. I'm a woman in my early 30s, but in my early 20s, I worked in a not so great environment. Some of the men I worked with would comment on my appearance. There were sometimes inappropriate sexual comments, and one man groped me at work. It sounds silly, but I didn't realize how bad it was at the time. I partly blamed myself for not being firm enough. I didn't report the incident where I was groped for a few reasons. I felt worried about his future career. I thought he was my friend. I felt I wouldn't be believed or that I would be blamed. The reason I am writing is that I have recently started working with a man who is respectful and professional. After talking to him about work, I started to feel both guilty and anxious. At first, I attributed this to the possibility that being friendly with him could be perceived as flirting, and I am in a happy relationship. When I gave myself more time to think, I realized that I had been avoiding anything other than surface-level interactions with male colleagues, and all the negative memories of my previous job felt quite raw again. I found myself in tears about something that I had just brushed off as annoying at the time. Do you have any advice on navigating working with male coworkers? It feels like I'm missing out on opportunities to learn from and collaborate with them because I put up a wall without realizing. Any advice would be greatly appreciated."
Wow. I want to ping a larger issue here, which is that sometimes you don't realize that you've been traumatized until later. Sometimes it's very normal that sometimes something will happen to you in the moment and you'll, because of shock, because of the situation that you're in where you're being, gaslit into thinking something is normal, whatever it is, like you might brush it off. And then only later will you come to terms with your feelings or realize that it affects you when something similar happens or when you find yourself in a situation that quite literally triggers the memory of it. And I think the human brain does everything it can to justify and rationalize. And so do not feel like it weird or like you should have known better or like it's too, late to come to this realization, because it's really not. Things hit you at different speeds. And like, that is very, very normal.
Definitely. And sometimes our body is responding and not necessarily our minds. And so then it's like, oh, I didn't expect to have this physical reaction. But it is really important to like honor that and pay attention to that. And so I totally get why you have these walls up, right? And then the question becomes, is it worth tearing them down and in what scenarios? Because I think the reality is that you probably can't have super healthy, respect flowing both ways relationships with all of your male colleagues in the same way you probably can't with all of your female or non-binary colleagues. And so I think one of the things that pops out for me is learning to trust yourself a little bit.
Your gut.
So learning that like you don't need to have a blanket, I'm going to be friends with all of my male colleagues approach, but that you can maybe take people a little bit more on a case-by-case basis and see, are they giving you evidence that this is somebody that you can trust, somebody that you can feel comfortable with? On the flip side of that, if they then end up being someone that's not trustworthy and or someone who does act inappropriately, that's not your fault, right?
Exactly.
Like, we all get duped. We all get misled. We all have experiences turn on us in ways that we didn't anticipate. And unfortunately, that is just like a part of life. But I do think that like, if this is something that you want to explore and you feel like there are some male colleagues in your life who you would like to have more of a relationship with, then I think it is worth, trying to get those walls down a bit with maybe the sense that if something like what happened before happened again, then maybe the you of today would respond in a different way than the you of then.
Yeah, I think sometimes and I'm speaking for women and perhaps people socialized female, or even, people, any kind of woman, or anyone with the experience of a woman, that scenario where you are balancing polite with friendly, with wondering if it's flirting, is a very little tightrope. There is this idea that you don't want to jump to conclusions and come off as rude, or you don't want to put a boundary up, or you don't want to, say something because you need to seem polite and deferential and nice in this way that, like, if a male colleague is being friendly with you, a lot of times we have a fawn response, which is to just like smile or giggle. It's built in for protection. And it goes back like literally to evolution. So the problem is that when you do feel protective of yourself and you do put up a wall and you do put up a boundary, you feel like, oh, like I'm rude, I'm being wrong, I'm being terrible. Like all the things that you're saying in the email, right? Because you're trained to say, I should be this open, friendly, smiling person, perhaps because of the way you've been socialized. Like I think part of me is like, if you're at work, it's fine to just talk about work. I think that some stuff, I think that like a lot of times people come off as like unfriendly when what they're really doing is just like setting a boundary and also like being like, my friends are not at my job, like it's this worry about coming off as like unfriendly or not down or not game or not cool that has somehow permeated the workplace. Although not somehow, I know it has since the dawn of time. But it's just like, it's so sad to me that like while you're doing your job, you also are doing a second job, which is like parsing out human social cues and characteristics and who's safe and who's not and who wants something from you and why do they want it and are they promoting you for the right reason and are they mentoring you for the right reason? And it's just like is exhausting and sucks.
Yeah, but I think it's like that tricky thing of like her wanting to maybe have closer relationships with some male colleagues. And so maybe what that looks like is still having some sets of boundaries that like, maybe don't drink around them or be around them when they're drinking, or you maybe...
Or be alone.
Yeah, don't be alone with them. And, especially like when other people have gone home, just sort of like set up some stuff. Make sure that like you've made it clear that they know that you're in that relationship, that you maybe don't veer into too much personal talk, that you keep, if like what you are interested in is a mentorship, that you really focus on like work and talking about things that apply to work and career and growth and in that area of your life, but not letting them into like, oh, and today I had a fight with my mom, like still like maintaining some strong boundaries that I think hopefully you can feel a little more comfortable in, but can still sort of bridge a bit of a gap to like enhance the relationship.
Just between us.